All right, so this video is going to be about how the market revolution impacted the agricultural sector, transportation, and communication. So, really what we're seeing here is that as everyone is driven more towards profit, towards streamlining production so that you can make the most profit, the agricultural sector is going to have some key shifts happening in it here as well. So first, there are some regional breakdowns that we can outline about what's happening in the agricultural sector. During the market revolution, regions start to specialize. Up in the Northeast, they're not very good at agriculture in terms of their soil's not good for it, the weather's not good for it. So ultimately, the Northeast is going to start to focus on rearing livestock and raising things like pigs, chickens, goats, those types of things that you can eat. Now, the area that we're in right here in Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, those areas at a later point in the 19th century will start actually engaging in cattle raising at a really heavy rate. And it's really not until that industry develops later in the 19th century that you see beef becoming a major part of the American diet. But within agriculture, just like everyone else, they're going to be using new devices and new technologies to streamline their production, to maximize their crop output. And so up in the Northeast, they're focusing on livestock and rearing them, whereas in the Midwest, they're going to become the grain basket of the United States, sort of the bread basket. It's really where most of the staple crops and foods that people eat are going to be produced. And so they're working on growing things like wheat, oats, any kind of basic food product that you turn into bread. And so that's where they're going to start to specialize. The South is going to pick its own specialty. They're going to start to focus far more heavily on slave-produced cash crops. And so really, there's a number of technologies that I listed out for you in the PowerPoint presentation, just sort of when they were designed and who invented them. But the most important out of all of those inventions, and the one I can promise you will pop up on an exam, is the invention of the cotton gin by Eli Whitney. This is invented in the end of the 1700s, but it's not patented until 1807. That's when it goes into wide use on American plantations in the South. Now, the cotton gin, I don't want to get too bogged down in the technicalities of it, but what it does is to actually get the usable part of cotton off of the crop is a very labor-intensive part of the process. And so to go and hand-pick the little ball of cotton off of the cotton stalk is the most labor-intensive part of cotton production. So Eli Whitney creates a wheel that will automatically, as you spin it, separate the usable cotton away from the stalk. Now, this might not seem like such a big deal to you. You might be saying, if I see that as a term ID, what would be the importance? The importance of this is that, very simply put, it's going to prolong slavery in American society. Coming up to this point in the early 1800s, generally what you're seeing here is that the cotton gin is going to reinvigorate what looked to be a dying institution of slavery. Simply put, slavery wasn't that profitable coming into the early 1800s. But when Eli Whitney and his invention of the cotton gin comes along, it makes it so that if we take it before the invention of the cotton gin, a single slave could produce 1 pound of usable cotton a day. After the invention of the cotton gin, that same slave can now produce 50 pounds of usable cotton a day. And then what it does is it reinvigorates and makes the slave production aspect of America's economy very, very vital, very crucial, and very profitable. And so really, when you're looking at the invention of the cotton gin, what it does is it prolongs any hopes you saw of having slavery abolished during the early 1800s. And it really did look as if it were going that way. Those are now gone. America is going to shift gears and really start to rely on the cotton agriculture of the American South. And of course, that agriculture is being carried out by slaves. Now, generally speaking, across the entire nation, what we're seeing is farmers are moving from subsistence agriculture, so producing enough for themselves and their families, towards what we call commercial or surplus farming, meaning that they're trying to produce as much as possible so they can sell it in the markets and make the highest amount of profit. And so that's what people are trying to do. But this requires two different advances to go along with it. And that's why I mentioned this all in the same video. We're talking about agriculture, transportation, and communication. Now, it's great if I can grow a whole bunch of, we'll say, wheat, and I want to move it from my house in the Midwest out to the East Coast markets where most of this is being sold. I have to have accessible transportation. And so what you're going to see developing right alongside these changes in agriculture is expanding roadways. America actually starts funding what's known as the National Road in the early 1800s. They're trying to make this road that will go all the way from the East Coast, namely Maryland at that point in time, and they want to connect it all the way up with the Mississippi River in the Midwest, America's breadbasket. This is so that people and products can be easily moved from one area to another. Another crucial invention is the steamboat engine. This really gets perfected around 1807, the same time that the cotton gin was patented. And what this allows people to do is turn America's rivers into two-way freeway systems. Up until that point, it'd be easy to go down the Mississippi if you're coming from the Midwest. You can get down to New Orleans pretty easily. You're just going to float with the current. But it'd be hard to go up the Mississippi against the current. When you're traveling by steam engine, this really doesn't matter. You can go either way on these rivers, and so it basically turns them into super freeways of commerce. In addition to that, in the north, we're seeing that the transportation system is starting to rely more on train when we're looking at distance travel. The north is building out railway systems. The south, they're limiting their building of railways. They're pretty much just connecting the plantations to the markets. Whereas railways are going to start cropping up all over the north. They become a key component of northern life. So you're going to see canals, roads, railways, they're all growing in conjunction with this growing push for profit. And right alongside that, if I'm going to grow my product in Michigan and I want to take it out and sell it in New York, I don't want to load up a cart with all my products and then trek it on out to the East Coast just to find out nobody's buying it. So this is ultimately going to necessitate sort of a greater level of communication happening quickly. So we're going to see post office start to explode right alongside the railway systems. In addition to that way, you're seeing a letter move at a much higher rate of speed. I could write someone out in New York, what is corn selling for right now? Or what's wheat look like in the markets out there? So before I load all my stuff up, I'm going to make sure that someone in New York tells me, yeah, they're going to be buying it when you get here. You're going to make money on this endeavor. And so, in addition to that, we're going to see the emergence of a really critical invention, the telegraph machine. Now, this machine is basically going to use electrical wires to send coded messages. It's a series, the entire English alphabet will be converted into dots and lines. And there's a little trigger, and you press dot, 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 line, line, dot, dot, line. And when that comes through on the other end of the telegraph machine, somebody can decode the message and figure out what you're asking. Generally speaking, it's going to be, what is the price of corn in New York? End. And so that's what they're doing in order to sort of revamp their communication. People need to move more readily. Products need to move more readily. So information needs to move along with it. In addition to this, we're going to see an explosion in publication. Printing becomes cheaper and more accessible to the common man. This is going to open up the rate of literacy in the United States exponentially. More and more people are going to learn to read because written materials and printed materials are far more widely available in the early 1800s. For those people who can't read, and that is a large proportion of the American public, you have Nathaniel Courier producing these colored lithograph images. They're telling you stories about American history or American contemporary life. One of his favorite subjects that you can see examples of in the PowerPoint presentation is life on the Western frontier. So if I'm an illiterate person living on the East Coast, I can pick up one of these images and get a good idea of what life looks like out on the Western frontier. So again, just to reiterate, this idea of greater production in agriculture means that we need to have better integration of people and products by transportation and better communication across the United States. Thanks.